Cheers, everybody, and welcome to episode 51 of your favorite late night Friday night hashcast. It is Variables with your hosts, Fergoli, Superior Buds, and I think Pedro is going to be back tonight joining us later. We shall see. Of course, tonight we got a special guest, my pal JR from 321 Genetics. He's a breeder, a grower, it's a processor. He's kind of a all-around well-rounded caregiver here in Michigan. He's got quite the experience to share with us tonight. A lot of different perspectives. I've been vending alongside him now for how long has it been? It's been a couple of years now, right?
Well, I mean, we can go all the way back to like
Yeah,
Harborside days,
true,
man.
true.
Technically,
We have been vending
yeah,
alongside with each other for quite
yeah.
some time. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, let's get into it, man. JR, how you doing tonight?
Cheers,
I'm
man.
wonderful,
Welcome.
man. How about you guys? Thank you.
Doing
Thanks for
well.
having me.
Doing awesome.
So just why don't you briefly give everybody a quick rundown of like who you are? Because I mean, for someone that's just watching this show and maybe doesn't know who you are, I mean, we're seeing the Michigan hat, so I'm assuming you're from Michigan, right? You must be a caregiver. You grow some weed. You like to smoke it. What's going on?
I'm actually from Ohio originally.
And you're
Oh,
wearing a Michigan hat. That's wild. That doesn't happen very
Yeah,
often. You must be a Northern Ohio guy.
yes, very much so. Closer to Ann Arbor than Columbus, so that's how
There you
I can
go.
get away with it.
That makes sense.
Oh. Um, I've been a caregiver for probably 7 years now, something like that, going on 7 years. Um, been growing a little longer than that, but I actually grew up in Ohio. I moved to Florida for about 8 years, something like that. And then as soon as the laws changed in Michigan, my wife and we moved up here and tried to find a place, and that was like the plan from the get. As soon as I heard it was legal up there, I wanted to give it a try. And I'd never
Okay.
grown before or anything, but found a good mentor, followed him around for like a year, and then started doing my own thing, and been doing that ever since.
So weed is literally what brought you to Michigan. It wasn't family. It
Yes.
wasn't
wow.
like a corporate job or anything like that. It was literally the opportunity to grow. That's awesome, man. That's really
Yes,
cool.
sir.
That's
I only
just
know a couple people
throwing it
like
all
that,
in the
but
top.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. Put your fucking eggs in the basket and go
Yeah,
for it,
go.
man.
No, for sure. I was a manager in retail. I used to run a couple different champ sports when I moved up here,
Nice,
in between
nice.
getting started and learning and stuff. And like that was my favorite job I've ever had. And like literally, as soon as I learned how to grow and had the confidence to do it myself, I literally handed in my keys the next day.
Oh no shit.
I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm gonna take a chance. Now or never.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
let's start way back. Do you remember the first time you ever smoked weed? And can you share that experience with us?
Oh, definitely. I, I played sports in high school and stuff. I didn't really smoke until
Mhm.
like the end of my senior year in high school, and the first time was literally an emptied out cigarette with the brownest weed you've ever seen.
Looking like tobacco.
Yes, yes, we called it cigar weed, and I hit that, and I don't know. I went home, took a nap for like an hour, woke up, and it was like 6, 7 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I called my buddy who had put me onto it and shared with me, and I'm like, dude, we gotta go do that again. And I've pretty much smoked every day since then.
Nice. I gotta ask your buddy that put you onto it. Where was he getting the weed, and was it from his older brother?
I I know in a while. I know for a while. I lived in Bowling Green for a while, and it's a big college town. And it's literally just some random guy's fucking apartment that like somebody would meet at the bar or something, and they'd be like, it was so hard back then. Like you'd have to make 100 phone calls to like people you really didn't know, like friends of friends of friends of friends, and it's like it's just crazy how far it's come since then, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 100%.
That's I was having this discussion I think yesterday, and I'm like, if you really think about like at least here in Michigan with the legalization of recreational legalization anyway of cannabis in the state, I feel like the only real positive to come out of it is just the accessibility to the cannabis itself. I'm not sitting here touting that it's quality or it's high grade or it's craft or anything like that you're going to get at these dispensaries. But the accessibility is the one thing that really seems to have changed for the better, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, until you've made like the 10 phone calls in a night,
Right.
friends of friends, you've sat in a parking lot and waited for an hour and your guy's late, and then he gets there and it's shit and it's seeds and stems, and you still pay for it because it's what you can fucking get. Like it's night and day. I never thought we'd be where we are today, but
I mean, I've literally ended nights with nothing but a mason jar full of infused olive oil because that's the only thing we could find. I ended up baking a cake and brownies and shit with it. You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, that's different times. Now, sure.
Scraping bowls and getting the rosin. Oh my God, that was dire times. Like when you could not find it. Well, I guess scrape out the bowl.
I always say that was, well, not always, but I recently figured out that might be actually be my first hash experience is scraping the bottom of a bowl.
Technically, it's probably all of ours. Technically,
build up that big ball and just hit it all fucking night. And never sure if it's like a high or you're just cutting off oxygen.
Yeah, I had like a 1.5 foot long steamroller, and like we'd scrape that out for like an hour and get the biggest ball and just hit that for like 2-3 hours. Like,
and we had our own little technique too. Like, you use the paper and get it. We had a metal tool that we used to pull it off, and then you heat it up and you could wipe it on the paper. And then you could all it up and burn the paper real quick, and it would just paper would go away. Now you got the big ball of goo.
So tell us, I mean, you've certainly come a long way since scraping bowls, I have to imagine. I've got some Rainbow Sherbet. So I picked this up from 321 this past weekend at the Third Eye Craft Fair. He grows a lot of great strains, but this one really stood out to me. And I'm just a fan of that kind of flavor profile, but awesome nug meat, frost production, great size. And he's replicating that kind of quality over and over again. In fact, looks like we went to plastic lids. I got some metal ones here.
Hey, that's an older one, yeah, for sure.
Some Meat Breath and Cap Junkie. I'm sure a lot of you guys listening recognize some of these strains. I've been fortunate enough to. There goes the track home for jar. We'll find out later. I've been fortunate enough to really, honestly, I think 321 Genetics here has provided me with the opportunity to process a bigger variety of strains than I think I have for any other caregiver. So I'm very grateful to you for that. And honestly, it's been some fantastic fire every time, as you just saw from this Rainbow Sherbet jar, man. All you guys out there, it's very, you just have like I don't know. We talked a little bit about this weekend, but I feel like you have like a unique type of, or like lane of strains you grow. And we talked about pheno hunting and like how it's kind of challenging to get rid of things and, find things sometimes. But, Cap Junkie, Meat Breath, Rainbow Sherbet's maybe a little bit different, but what's your, like, as a grower and a smoker, let's start with that. As a smoker first, what kind of strains do you like? What kind of flavor profiles? What kind of, is it flower that you're mostly smoking?
I'm mostly smoking concentrates.
Okay.
Like the pleasure is all mine, by the way, for running material, by the way. Like I remember when Arborside days, like that's literally the only other thing I would buy there would be your concentrates there. And then before the caregiver stuff went down, one of the guys there is like, "You want to meet for Growly?" I'm like, "Heck yeah." It's like the best day ever. And I'm like, please run my material. And you're like, "Heck yeah, I'll do it." And I'm like, it's been awesome ever since. Anything you've made for me has been amazing. Absolutely amazing. Like most of it, like I don't get rid of most of it. Like I just stay smoking it. It's all my personal stuff for the most part. Like I told you Saturday, like it's probably been a little over a year since the last time you made a lot for me, and like I didn't sell hardly any. And I've just been smoking out of that for a like all over a year, and I was just running out this weekend, a little over a year later. So But
gotta have your personal stash.
Right.
Oh yeah, for sure. I just get rid of my flower for the most part. But I mean, I still do smoke my fair share of flower. Terp wise, like I'm really not picky. Like if it piques my interest, if it tastes good, whether it's gassy or fruity or earthy, like I don't know if the terps are good on it. It's just good to me. Like I'm not like anything like I need something that tastes super gassy all the time or anything like that, or
Mhm.
all fruity or anything like that. And like as far as like how I weed out what strains I keep and stuff, a lot of it is now it's as much as it stinks, a lot of it's yield, but I mean I still can like the rainbow sherbet. That is one of the most beautiful plants I've ever grown in my life,
Mhm.
and it's a great yielder, and it's like jackpot. You know what I mean? And like as soon
Best
as
of
you look
both.
at that, you're like, wow, that's a keeper. And it's like, I don't know how I haven't gotten this sooner. Um, it's just hard now with the market the way it is to really do pheno hunting in the situation I'm in right now. Like I don't have a big enough space. Like
Mhm.
I need to produce as much flour for patients and stuff as possible.
Mhm.
And like I haven't done some real pheno hunting seed wise in probably 6 months. This was the last one that I did some of my seeds that I ran. Just testing them
Is
out.
that so? For me, I'm only doing like one pheno hunt a year, but for you, you know, you saying 6 months sounds like it's a long time. Were you normally popping seeds like every month or two or something? Or
Yeah, but like I've always been scared to take in clones for the longest time. I just started
yeah.
taking in clones probably like 2 years ago, and like I keep them separated in tent for at least like 2, 3 months, and I have to get them all HLVT tested and make sure there's no bugs and all that good stuff.
Can't be
But
too careful.
I've
Seriously.
had some good luck the last few times grabbing some clones from the place I grabbed clones from. So, and this last round, like I try to change up my strains like around once a year, just to keep it fresh for my patients and stuff. Because I mean, you only grow 5 or 6 strains, you kind of get tired of that over a year. So
Mhm.
this last time I got like 15 clones, and like 10 of them are just like I can't get rid of these. Like they all got a keeper sense. Either one's like
Oh.
you know what I mean? Like either one's like just that flavor you want, or one's just so pretty and yields great, or
Mhm.
like it's just hard to choose, which is a good problem to have, I guess.
So is that kind of where your limit is? About 5 strains or so that you know tend to keep?
Right now, I'm at my max. I'm at like 10, which is
Mhm.
a little few more than I'd like to have. But like I said, I can't choose between them, so I'll just keep going with them. I've tried to get a system like it's impossible for me just about to have like one whole strain for one of my 4x8 tables. So I kind of just split it in between 2 strains. I'll have like 4 or 5 plants of each one on my table,
I mean,
and
with limited
I try to
plant
do it like
counts
that.
and that many strains, yeah, it's very hard to get to that. You know,
Yeah,
I'm right now. I have 2 4x8 sections that are all the same strain. One is lime skunk. Thank you, Lord Jesus.
nice.
The other is raspberry parfait, but it's still technically in the pheno hunt. I still got 3, I think, or 2 or 3 out of 5 original phenos in there. We're still battling it out. You know what I mean? So it's all the
For
same
sure.
strain, yeah. But like, I mean, technically not. It's they're 2 different phenos, 3 different phenos, whatever. They might have different flavor profiles, growing profiles entirely, the way they look, colors, structures, everything. So you know, it's difficult. That being said, it's very difficult as a
And
caregiver to maintain a real heavy or wide variety or palette of strains, you know.
for
When
sure.
you're
And like, oh, go ahead.
sorry. I was gonna say when you guys are doing a pheno hunt, how many plants are you looking to run out of each? Like what do you target?
I'm usually popping half a pack, so 5 6 seeds,
5 or
and then
6?
you know, but by the time those 5 or 6 get to flower, if that's assuming, let's really call it 3 or 4, because there's probably going to be a couple males or some
Yep.
runs or something in there, right? So by the time those 3 or 4 uh, get to flower, let's just call it 5, because that's what the last pheno hunt with the raspberry parfait and squirt was. There was 5 of each. By the time they get to flower, man, now I've got what, 4 5 6 clones going of each one of those. So now we're talking up to potentially 30 clones sitting in a a dome, and then all of a sudden I got to transplant those into 1 gallons, and then they're ready to transplant into 5 gallons or something before we're even harvesting and stuff. So it's like I've either got to make some decisions on the way, or I've got to just kind of slow my roll during a pheno hunt and really just like keep it around until I can figure it out. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm only taking 3 or 4 or 5 clones at a time, and only taking 4 of those to flower at a time. So
and then you're culling as you go then.
Yeah. And so I started with 5. I think I'm at 2 or 3 on both of them now, and by the end of this next harvest I'm hoping to have made that decision. I'm sick of is it RP1 or 5, or is that a 4? What
For sure. I'm about the same way. Like, it depends. If it's regs, I usually do, like, if it's a 10-pack, I'll do the whole pack because, like you said, you're almost guaranteed half of them are going to be male. So, like, and by the time you send them in the flower, it's like you said too, it's like 3, maybe 4 plants. But then you got to have all the clones and all that stuff. And me personally, like, if I like a couple of them, I got to run them again, like, 2 more times at least before I know for sure, like, minimum that is it's actually what it is. Yeah, that it wasn't just a seed.
Spartan Grown is in chat, and he disagrees with me and you on that. Then he'd just rather just make that determination after the first one. He's giving me shit about that before, but I'm like, I gotta see it. I gotta see it several times before I make that decision, because we're talking about strains that are up there with Clementine and Lime Skunk, and Cobra Milk Spartan, and these like real winners in my eyes. So if I don't want to screw up and keep the wrong pheno. Not that I've done that before, but I do miss some phenos. You know what I mean? Like, I had to make a decision on Jelly Bean, and I had 3 different types of Jelly Bean, and I kind of wish I could have kept them all, but some of them were a little bit more repetitive with the other strains that I had in my garden. But guess what? I went back and re-hunted one of those, phenos in particular that I didn't keep because I ended up kind of liking it better.
Nice.
Just takes experience. I wish I could say I crush every grow on every seed and every pheno hunt and every clone, from all the way through flower and harvest and processing, but that's not always the case.
And that's the other thing with the limited room right now and how it is out there. Like, you got to keep the winners. You can't afford mediocre plants in your garden, really. Like,
yeah,
you just can't.
The plant count's the biggest issue for me. Yeah,
for sure.
I'm growing such big plants and flower nowadays that it's not even the plant count; it's more the space. I really just I don't even have space to fill out 72 plants nowadays.
Yeah, and like every inch of that square foot's important, Like, you got.
I could do 70 in a sea of green, but
right,
not full.
But not in 25-gallon pots, you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the benefit of my style.
Exactly.
I only have to go to 1 gallons.
Yeah, I've done that too. I've done the Rockwell cubes and everything. But just I don't know, man. I'm really liking this soil. Let's ask 3, 2, 1, man. So tell us more about your growing style. Are you like, what media you're growing in? What nutrients? What lighting? What? We'll start there.
All right. Medium. I'm in. I've just recently switched to cocoa. Probably about 3-4 months ago from Dirt Pro Mix. Really like it. It comes in like these convenient, like, expanding bags, so you don't have to buy pots or anything. They're fabric. It's literally fabric pots. I do like I'm basically, you could say I'm hydro. I recirculate. I just have them 4x8 tables with a recirculating system. Simple, basic, nothing complicated at all. I plug in a pump. That's how I water.
So your flood and drain?
Yeah, and then recycle it.
Yep.
Catch it all and recycle it.
That's how my veg is set up, is flood and drain 4x4. But once you get to the big table, I went with micro drippers and then drained to waste.
Gotcha.
But it's a way bigger pain in the ass. But cocoa is my go-to as well.
For sure. I don't know why it took me so long to go to cocoa. It dries out so much faster. Like, my plants look way happier in cocoa since, like, not saying they look like crap in Pro Mix, but I can definitely see a difference in the cocoa, and it's way more convenient.
I get the benefit.
Yeah, that's what That's what I feel like too when I switch.
Yeah, I can do everything you can do in soil, but I can do everything I did in hydro. So
for sure. No, I love it. I wish I would have switched sooner. And then
when they came out with expanding pots, though, that was a game changer.
For sure. Like I don't even I can get those shipped right to my house. Like I don't have to carry
a little box this big, and it's got 12 freaking gallons in it.
Exactly. Like I can get, it's basically the equivalent, like when I order them, it's like the equivalent of like 2 big 60-pound bales of Pro Mix. Like I live in town, so, and like I don't need to be carrying that stuff all over.
I'm trying to
plus it's heavy. It's so heavy. I'm old, man. I'm getting older, and like maybe when I first started, it wasn't that big a deal, but now it's like, man, I just got to open my front door and it's here. Like,
I used to carry 4x4 flood and drain tables up 2 flights of stairs to wash them and the back down. Like that shit ain't ever happening again nowadays, bro. Like, no, I might drink that shit outside and throw it up against a building and power wash it, but I'm not weaving it up staircases anymore.
It had been so long since I bought Pro Mix. I had the wife pick up Pro Mix this last year from the garden store and didn't think anything of it. And then she got it home and I go to pull it out and I'm like, holy shit, how did you move this? She's like, oh, I had someone help me. I'm like, thing's twice your weight. Holy shit.
Yeah, I don't miss that at all for sure. No, Coco is definitely a game changer for sure.
What do you run for nutrients?
I do a little like custom mix. My main base is the GH Flora series. With some synthetic acids, some organic stuff. It's a little mix of both.
Synganic, we like to call that.
That's what I tell people. And then that's basically it.
What kind of watering schedule are you on? Like, is it every day, every other day, multiple times a day?
It depends on the plants and what stage they're in. Like I run perpetual in my main flower room. So like I'm harvesting like every 2 weeks a table.
Nice.
So everything's in different stages. Like the first week or so, it's maybe every other day, but as they get going, it's watered like once a day, and then towards the end, it's 2 times a day. Which I'm in like sometimes I use 2 gallon. Most of the time I use 3 gallon cocoa like fabric bags with fillable stuff. But yeah, I'm doing that, and like. The flush is probably around 1.5 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that. It's basically whenever my point parts million are at the right spot, and that's another thing. I don't mess with EC. I use ppms. So I'm really old.
I can explain to you that you are using EC though, because all the ppm meters are just EC meters.
For sure. I just never. Wanted to change.
Just like the extra couple decimals,
For the longest time, I mean, you didn't realize why your friend's ppm was so much higher than yours, and then you're like, you start learning the difference between ppm and TDS and 700 versus 500, and then there's a third scale now as well, and it's just like, holy shit! Just okay, let's stop doing math and just tell me I run 2.1.
For sure. And like you can still read your plants and tell. Like I don't I push my plants pretty hard with the first few waterings of the week, and then I dial it back a lot just by reading the plants. Like I don't even remember last time I checked the parts per million. Like
dude.
At the end of flush, like just to make sure your leaves will get like basically almost see-through by the end when you're flushing, if you're doing
with the recirculating system like that. It's a lot of fun because you can, depending on your nutrients and how stable they are in the reservoir, as long as you don't get fallout. I mean, I ran Jax for an entire flower cycle and never changed my reservoir. All that it was did top offs just as an experiment, and the plants were fine. Now they were a little nitrogen heavy at the end. They could have used quite a bit of flushing, but let them chew up some of that. Not flushing, just water feed. Let them chew up their excess nutrients there. But I mean, realistically, it worked, and I was really surprised. But that recirculating system, the plant's going to take up what it wants half the time.
For sure. And like, if you can read your plants, like I've literally done this same system basically in nutrient feed chart and all that. The only thing I've changed is substrate and lighting since I've started. Everything else is exactly the same.
Cheers, Pedro.
Yeah, I want to ask you about lighting, but welcome, Pedro.
Yep.
How you doing, man? Welcome back. How was your time in the woods?
That was a very long transition. It was good, man. It was very good.
I was just trying to figure out how much I wanted to say about your time in the woods. I don't know. I was going to let you share.
Oh, no. That's all right, man. That's all right. Everybody can know. No, it was a good time, actually. Much needed time off. I shut the phone off. And I came down a couple times into service, turned the phone on, opened Instagram, and I was like, nah, dude, I need a fucking break. So spent the entire week with the cell phone off. We did get one cow elk in the hunting party that we were in, which we were a hunting party of 6, so it's not that great, but it wasn't a flop, I guess. Yeah, exactly. But no, I took the daughter out, had her first hunt, 5 years old, up in the 10,000 foot up in the mountains in Colorado, elk hunting. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, it was a good time, much needed time off for sure. How the hell is everybody here?
Back. We're doing good, man. We're just talking to my buddy 321 Genetics. So I guess JR from 321 Genetics, I should say.
What's going on,
he's Ohio born. Florida transplant that moved to Michigan to grow weed. He saw the opportunity once the legalities came around and has been up here ever since, just crushing it. I've shared with everybody I've done quite a bit of processing for him. Been very fortunate enough to process quite a few of his strains, but we're just kind of getting to gotten through his backstory a little bit and talking about his growing style and philosophy right now. He's a cocoa grower and does a little bit of Synganics, if you will, with his own kind of blend of stuff. And the next thing I wanted to ask him was about his lighting. What kind of lighting you're running, JR?
So I run basically 800 watt LEDs, the full spectrum dimmable, all that good stuff.
Some big boys.
And then in between those, I actually run 315 metal halides with the blue bulbs. Instead of the actual flower bulbs, I use the veg ones just for that little extra pop of spectrum. Mm-hmm. Yes. Nice. And since I've done that, like I don't know if it's just, I feel like just everything has improved with my plants with those. From just the time I flip them to the time I harvest, they just are nonstop happy, loving that spectrum. So nothing fancy, just a little
It'll mix old and new.
Yeah, for sure. They're not too much power. They throw off enough light though. And
when you say the blue ones, are you referring to the old Blurple lights that everybody always used to talk about?
No, I think I want to say they're the higher K. I want to say they're like 45K blue for the 315s. Nothing special.
Like
they're
the
cheap bulbs
or whatever.
Yeah, the veg spectrum that most people use for the veg form, which I do use that in my veg as well. Just the 315s, I just use LED clone lights in veg, but the main things I use are the 315 blue bulbs.
So Pedro, I was telling him this weekend that I actually used to run, when I was running HIDs, I would run 4 HPSs, and then in the center I'd have one metal halide running. And that was just, sometimes I did it for the first 2 and last 2 weeks. Sometimes I did it but it's more or less just to get the little bit fuller spectrum when I was running the HPSs, kind of setting the spectrum of the bulb until it starts dying off and changing and on, whatever. But yeah, I think that's kind of there's quite a few different reasons people would add that blue spectrum to like a more red spectrum flower, A, to get that full spectrum kind of effect. B, I think some people think it helps with like stretch in the first, couple weeks. And then C, I've also heard, and the reason I eventually ended up doing it is because it's supposed to help with trichome production in the last like couple weeks too. So, I mean, all around, I think honestly, it's kind of I hate to say this, but I'm in the camp that's like the more light, the better, as long as everything else is okay, right? Like you have to have your environment in check to be able to run more light. You have to have your nutrients and your plant and your rhizosphere health in check to be able to run more light. But like all things equal, that's how you get bigger, frostier, more voluminous nugs, is to be able to run more light, because what is the actual food for the plant? It's not the nutrients that you're feeding the rhizosphere or the roots. It's the photons that are coming from the lights in your room. That's what's actually feeding that plant. It's just, takes everything else to kind of complete that cycle. So, any idea? I mean, 800 watt lights, LEDs, that's pretty intense. I'm running 630s and I run them at like 75% probably for the most part. I mean, do you have any idea what kind of like wattage per square foot or anything like that you're running? I mean, 315.
I have no idea. I know I've got. They all fit in my timer. That's all I know.
I don't blow any fuses or breakers.
I've got way more power than I need to, so I'm good on that. I'm not worried about that. So, but no, I haven't had any issues with that. They're all good.
Yeah, I assume you're just running like 12-12, right? You ever do any experimenting with like 11-13 or no?
I'm set in my ways, man. I'm an old guy. I'm doing the same thing I did since I started. Basically, I'm hard to change. It took me forever to change the LEDs.
Right? Yeah, I feel you on that, man. I'm only 4 years in on those or something like that. But
yeah, that's me too.
Yeah. Bergola, you were talking about the light and pushing it as far as you can. This is one of my favorites when it comes to plants. It's the law of the minimums, where you're actually limited by what your least amount of something is. So it's a little different where for us, it's what's our inputs, right? But not a lot of people run true macros, but your main nutrients, your NPK, your light, your CO2. So you can get more.
Sure.
But yeah, if you as long as you're not bleaching the plants, just throw it at them. You're not hurting them. You're just wasting power if they're not using it. But
for sure. And like I don't run them 100% the whole way, and probably not till like week 3. I crank them on 100% like week 3. But it's about 50% the first 3 weeks. Because when I have it at 100% and I flip them in there, they're not used to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll look sad, like if it's just too much for them. And another good thing about adding those 315s is like I've got them on rolling tables, so I can kind of roll the plants under those lights when I first flip them. So it's not as the LED, even though it's at 50% or a little harsher, maybe, or a little higher. They're still happy under that 315 because that's what they were getting in my bedroom.
I'm still running the original HLGs there, where the dimmer was like on the driver, super annoying. So because they're up high, I didn't want to have to go and try and dim all the lights and match everything, voltage meter. It's super annoying. So I run 100% all the time, and I just raise the shit out of them. I get them way 10 feet away from the plants, and then I bring them down, and then I go back up with the plants.
I'm really surprised you never wired those into a controller.
I don't have a controller. I don't know.
I'm talking to Superior about the dimmable HLGs, because that's what I did. I just took every freaking cover off and hardwired them all into the Ethernet, whatever is it R12, RJ12?
Yeah, the RJ12 So I was going to, but gosh, that's just a lot of work and extra wires. And at this point, I'm already due for an upgrade. I mean, I've been on these HLGs for 8 years.
Oh shit! Okay.
I mean, they're original HLG 300s, and I don't have a single diode out on any of them.
How crazy is that, man? I've been pretty fortunate enough with mine too. Like I said, they're only like 4 years in or whatever on those ones, but other than the stupid dimmer method that they designed, like outside of that, I really haven't had any issues with them. And I also said, I barely run those suckers at 100% because I just don't need it.
My next ones will be on a controller, so I have my inner canopy lights on the controller. They're on the Trollmaster. Oh, there goes my fruit fly. Speaking of it. So
I know I saw one earlier.
Girly got one before the show, and I'm like, I'm probably gonna have one tonight too. So
Coming for our terps.
I tell you guys what, that's one of the biggest reasons I run the Dragon Alphas that I do, the Alphas 2s, is they have a controller app. So I can just go into my phone, I can shut it off right now. I can change all of the spectrum. I can change the intensity. I can turn individual lights on or off if I want to. As much as I'm not a techie like Budsy, my shit's right the fuck here, and I can tell exactly what I need to do all the time. So it's really kind of nice. And just like you guys said, I'm not running 100%. I think mine are at 75 right now, on their way up.
Yep.
So, speaking of controllers, did you see the new AC Infinity release?
So I've been out, I've been checked out, but I did see that they had something. I shared.
Wait, you didn't get the flyer dropped over, when they were flying the planes and dropping the propaganda for the AC Infinity? Sorry.
No, I shared the post. I am / was / I don't know, a sponsor. They sponsor me. I have a lot of AC Infinity stuff. I love AC Infinity stuff, to be honest with you. As far as their exhaust fans, that's really the extent of what I've used from them. I've heard a lot of trash talking regarding their all-in-one systems, their Blurple lights, their new tents and stuff like that. I highly recommend their fucking their exhaust fans. I have had no problems, zero problems with any of their exhaust fans. I've sent a lot of people over to AC Infinity, and they've all come back with, their systems, they're all-in-ones. And I said, I'm just recommending their fans, period. So I really don't know about their latest update. I love their fans, their exhaust fans.
The new controller is pretty sweet.
Is it?
Yeah, it really is. They're going up against Trollmaster, Growlink, Pulse. Except they're the first controller now with AI built in.
Oh, then I'm out.
And so
oh no. You've scared him. You scared the boomer.
I can explain what it actually means, but Pedro's not going to understand.
Fuck no, I'm out, dude. I already checked out.
I'm listening. I've been
the benefit of this though
in the AI lately.
So think about if you have a heater in your tent, but yet outside your tent is actually warmer. Do you want to turn on the heater? This controller can actually say, no, I can just turn on your exhaust fan, exchange the air to warm my tent up. Or is it cooler outside the tent? It knows because there's a sensor now on the
obviously you have to have a sensor for both the inside and the outside of the tent.
It already comes with it. The new controller has the external sensor for the lung room. And then you have their new sensor that goes inside is a much smarter sensor.
I'll tell you,
you can now control 48 devices.
Oh shit!
So they're going the full controllable route. So you can do their smart plugs, you can do their fans, you can do the exhaust fan, you can do the humidifier, dehumidifier, AC, heat. You're going to be able to do control everything.
What part of that is AI though? Because you saying that if it's warmer outside the tent,
that's a use case.
Yeah.
That's a use case. Well, wait. So, what makes that decision of which one do I choose?
A pre-programmed sensor.
No, it's not an if and else statement, dude. That is not that simple.
Then what is it?
Humidity and temperature both to control. So if my temperature and humidity outside is a certain range, and my interior temperature and humidity is a certain range, I need to make sure that I don't swing one. So AI can make these decisions, and yes, you can code that in a massive if statement, but a neural network does this without any inputs, learning your environment. So your exhaust fan, say you're running a 4-inch exhaust fan and you need to drop the humidity by 30%. It may go, well, you know what? I already know your exhaust fan can't control it. Even though it's super low outside, your exhaust fan won't lower the humidity fast enough for me to get it in range. So I'm going to do the exhaust fan and the dehumidifier, or it's going to do.
Okay. So it is the learning part. They do have that portion in there.
It actually learns about your equipment and how it's working.
Because I don't think that example was a great example of AI. That really was just if-then statements to me.
But it's not an if. I'm a programmer. That's if someone told me that was if-then, I'm going to tell them you're a bad programmer. But
you could design it that way. Pre-AI, we could do that.
2,000 statements, and you're still going to be shitty 90% of the time.
But guess what? That fan turned on. That's all you fucking needed.
So, but that's where the AI and learning about it. So I'm going to play with it in veg because I mean, I'm already troll master. I'm not changing that. That's too deep into that system for flower, but it'll be a fun experiment in the veg because I have a lung room. I have external units controlling stuff of my environment in my lung room.
There's enough different, what are they called?
So many
variables there that we could.
Well, that's, I mean, speaking of variables, that's how a neural network works. You take in a set of variables, you have a set number of neurons, and then you have outputs that it can do. Turn on a dehumidifier, turn off a dehumidifier, turn on a light, all these different things. How it gets from variable to output is the learning portion.
The learning portion, yeah.
That's the neurons that get formed and trained over time.
So how long until I have nanobots feeding my plants and killing aphids and shit like that?
Pulling leaves.
Yeah. I just want them to trim. That's really all I want. Just trim my shit, please.
No, not just pulling the leaves. They need to compost the leaves in place.
Okay, let's one step at a time. Okay.
Here we go. I'm gonna be very fucking controversial. I feel like fucking Frenchie cannoli back here walking away because all y'all motherfuckers are getting way too fucking technical for me. It used to be just ice and fucking a hot water bottle, and now it's getting all crazy.
Well, you're the one that says you can't make hash without a freeze dryer.
Yeah, it used to be butane
Come
cans
on.
and glass tubes, but here we are.
I have a little possible in my grow, little as possible. Basic timers. I got like Wi-Fi connected to some sensor humidity and dew point and all that good stuff. That alerts me if something's off, and I can, like, my ACs down there are hooked up to Wi-Fi too. So that's the extent. Nothing. I had a Troll Master. I didn't like it. Like it's like do some crazy things and then light up and like messed up like a couple of my plants because it's the night for no reason.
Yeah.
Troll. I guess I needed the controller out of the room, and I'm like, nah, I'm not doing all that.
I've got a whole
control back to basics
outside. Yeah. I mean, mine's definitely overboard. 100%. I don't ever recommend someone grows like I grow, but I'm playing more than I've grown so long. It's just
that's why I got it. Like just experiment.
I did 30 years of analog timers and HPS, and I'm like, you know what? It's time to play now. I'm an engineer. I'm a programmer. This AI controller, it's funny. My growing system has been controlling my room this way for 8 years. Oh yeah, don't forget analog timers. Gotta.
Yes, that's all I use, man. All I use.
That's a good point though that Red makes. I mean, why we might as well just do this rapid fire. I guess we could do that. We can start with JR 3, 2, 1. Are you guys changing your timers for daylight savings, or are you just rolling with it and realizing that you're an hour, like your lights are on an hour difference or whatever now?
Nah, just keep them exactly the same. Like instead of them going off at noon, they'll go off at 11, and there's no.
I used to
just I have to get up earlier or something.
I would plan my flower runs so that I knew that after daylight savings, whether I gained or lost, depending on what time of the year it was, I was still going to be able to visit the plants. Because what you didn't want is that hour shift to all of a sudden be like, well, fuck, now it's 1 a.m. when I don't want that.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's worked out fine for me. I haven't changed mine in years.
I'll be honest. I change my flower time throughout the year based on the sunrise and sunset. And that's only because of, quite frankly, like heating and cooling. I've found that I can more effectively manage it in the cold of Michigan here, especially in the summer months. If I turn some lights on, say at 6 p.m. during the winter rather than 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. So I do, a couple times throughout the year, I will change it an hour or two at a time. I guess usually an hour at a time. So I maybe change it a couple times, but it's not based on daylight savings. It's more or less based on when I want to work and how cold it is at a certain time of the day.
Well, that's the other thing is I want my lights on in the middle of the night because my rooms are going to get fucking cold up here if I don't have those lights on. I mean, my garage right now is cold because my flower room is not running, and it's noticeably cold, and we're not even in winter yet.
I like to call it free heat, but it's really just recycling the giant expensive, electric bill that you already have.
3.41 BTUs per watt.
Yeah. Might as well capture some of those, right?
Yeah. Use it. I mean, recycle it. That's what I do. I move it around.
I have a giant 8x8, I think it is, veg tent, Gorilla. I think it's 8x8x8 veg tent from Gorilla Grow Tents. And in the winter time, I have that tent. Sorry, during the summertime, I have that tent exhausting through a carbon filter, through some insulated ducting, and out a vent. And in the wintertime, I have that ducting pouring directly into the room around the tent. And no, it's not enough to do any sort of humidity or cause any sort of humidity issues, which I definitely would say that is quite likely in maybe a more sealed environment like a bedroom or something where you've got a veg tent in there, or let's even call it a flowering tent because that's really where the humidity is coming from. So if you got a flowering tent and you're dumping that hot humid air back into the same room, you might be finding some issues pretty soon.
You've got carpet in that room.
Yeah. But in an outbuilding that isn't fully insulated, doesn't have heat, and could use it. I'm just gonna recycle that hot, slightly humid air. It's a veg tent, so it's really not that humid, honestly, especially in winter.
It's funny because I run the heater, then I run the lights, and then I exhaust the heat. I purposely in the winter bring my temperature like 2 degrees above my exhaust set temp so that I exhaust some of that heat out into the lung room. Then the DQ will run, which will also raise the temperature. And then you've got the freeze dryer running, you've got the freezers running, you've got the ice maker running. I'm trying to generate a shitload of heat, and it's still fucking cold out there sometimes. So.
Got to turn on a couple TVs, turn on a security monitor, some old LCDs
oil heaters. The big oil heaters are awesome.
Why don't you get some? Why don't you run like a backup server for your business or something, and just have that going? That produces a lot of heat.
I'm pretty sure that would not be PCI compliant.
I still use light movers in veg, man, so I don't have to turn on an AC or anything.
You are getting old.
I'm old school. I got 315s on the light movers.
Every now and then I find something in my shed, and I'm like, I should throw this away. Like, I'm never going to use my 8-bulb T5 again. You know how hard it is to throw that fucker away?
Same boat, bro. I got 2 or 3 of those bulbs still work. I don't know. Maybe I'll use it for something one day, right? No, it's not going to happen. I'm going to break more of those bulbs before I use it just because I knock shit
I
into
moved
it,
CMH and metal halide bulbs for 4 different moves. All like house to house to house.
Never used once in between.
The power cords, man. All the power cords. I don't know. It's like, I don't know how, like, if you don't have a box of power cords, you're not a grower. Right. Like, all different sizes, all lengths, 210, 110.
Splitters, yeah.
I got the worst of both worlds. They're grower and tech guy, so I have a box for each. That's like, and sometimes I don't remember which controller it was. I plugged in the wrong barrel connector into the wrong controller, and I let the magic smoke out. So it was my Blue Lab. It was my Blue Lab Guardian Connect. It was like a $400 fucking pH meter.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I feel you on that.
Less automation, the better.
I've been playing. I've been technically online in some form of fashion for almost 30 years now, and even longer than that, I've been interested in cameras and just Game Boys, Palm Pilots, all that shit back in the day, right? I have a full ass Rubbermaid bin full of cords. Some of them I can't even describe the connection to you, let alone tell you what it went to. You know what I mean? But it's just one of those problems you have. It's like, I might find this thing one day, might need this one day. It's just never no.
My last move, I finally got rid of things like VGA cords.
I still got a handful of those.
I found zip drives. Do you get those old?
Yeah. It was like a giant floppy disk, right?
After all of my,
it was like 100 meg.
Yeah.
After all of my LED sponsorships, I've got power cords and power supply boxes and I've got timber lights, I've got chilled lights all over, I've got the old Blurple fucking
where the blue up in there.
Yeah, just tons of different fucking lights, dude. It's funny because I won't ship the fucking things because Jesus Christ, the money that it costs to ship them. But I've tried to convince like my brother-in-law, my fucking heady boy, my apprentice. I've tried to convince buddies around here. I'm like, I have lights for you. Will you fucking set up a tent? Not like you don't know somebody that can grow some herbs so I can teach you.
Yep.
But no, they're just fucking sitting around. And now I have power supply boxes and shit that I don't even know if I can match up anymore.
I finally went through and got rid of all my Raptor hoods because those took up way too much room.
What'd you do with them?
I had a buddy that grew still using all HPS, and so he took them all, and then he switched all HLG. He's like, cut my power bill by a quarter. Holy shit! Like,
yeah, I mean, I like same thing. I've got probably enough hoods and ballast to replicate my entire grow right now.
Right. And those ballasts are
old tech.
They're so heavy and
boat anchors.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Suckers are boat anchors.
That's hilarious.
Solid steel, big ass metal handle on the side.
You remind me of an old fucking walleye fisherman, so I can see you saying a boat anchor.
It's exactly what them suckers all they're good for anyway, I swear. No, you can still use those. If you got that's all you had, I'd still use them. But no, I gave all mine away too. I started out using double endeds when they were that was the first thing that was super hot when I first started growing. I switched from the HPS. I had the HPSs, but then as soon as the double endeds come out, ungodly, they were super expensive. They're as much as the LEDs are now. And it's like, I literally had to give all of those away, probably 30 of them.
Dude,
gave them away. It's like, just get them out of my house. Like they're taking up so
to get
much
rid of them.
It's like a paying for a storage unit for this shit.
Yep. And like literally overnight power bill cut in half.
Yeah.
I started going back in like
Vader's
99.
Vader's newest video was the same way. He's got all the old stuff but he's like, I can't get rid of it. Like I use it and it's hard to break old habits.
It is. I know it took me longer than I should have to switch to LEDs.
What were you saying, Pedro? Something about 09?
Sorry, now I was back in my settings trying to figure out if it's actually coming through here or not. Yeah, I started growing back in 99. And man, when I had my first HPS set up, I felt like I had the world by the balls, dude. You know, I remember growing, like I said, back in 99, before I knew there was the thing is with carbon filters and whatnot. I had my front entrance was on the ground floor, but my back where my back windows where my exhaust was second level. So I didn't really worry too much about the exhaust, except it was fucking illegal as shit in Madison, Wisconsin. So I bought all those little sprayers that you'd have in the bathroom, you know, every 5, 10, 15 minutes. And I sprayed them all around my fucking house, dude. It was horrible. Fucking horrible decision. But yeah, I felt like I was the king back in the day. Fucking have like you said, a big 4x8 grow tent in my room, my bed off in the corner, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually those tents start taking over your apartment, condo, house, whatever you're in. You know what I mean? You got a whole room's dedicated to
you buy a house with an extra bedroom just so you can fucking grow in it.
Yeah, I've done there. So, JR, you've got what I would consider probably my favorite, if not the absolute best hash maker I've ever tasted hash from, sitting on the panel with you, and someone that is incredibly tech driven and also makes hash. And from my understanding, you also have been getting into a little bit of solventless hash making. I think you've been doing it for a little bit, but like you recently upgraded your game, your tech. Why don't you just explain to these guys what you got going on, what kind of your goals are, and maybe they can give you some kind of advice and feedback. Unfortunately, I got to step away for a minute. I'll be right back.
For sure, that'd be awesome. So I used to use BHO and all that. I just recently got interested in starting making bubble hash, and I got a freeze dryer and a press. I've had a rosin press for like 5 years, and just have never used it. I just look at it because like I've air dried hash a couple of times in the past, and it just doesn't turn out like I want it to. But I've done a few like practice runs with some trim, making bubble hash, putting in the freeze dryer. I've had some great results with that. Like it's actually turned out really nice for just dried up trim stuff that's been in my freezer for God knows how long. Um, I did just recently do my first batch of live stuff. It turned out all right. Um, I did cold cure. I feel like I probably got into it a little too early. I probably should have waited because I've got some still left, and it seems to be getting wetter and terpier as the older it gets here. Um, but just any tips would be welcome. Anything, because um, I love hash. Like that's basically the majority of what I smoke, and it's basically I'm just trying to make it for me.
How are you washing today?
I have a 20-gallon trash can and just the bubble bags, and
Mix
I just did. Yeah, I just do use the 73 and like 149 bags for the first wash to press. And it turned out a great color. It looks real nice. Seems to burn pretty clean. Got a good real nose on it and everything. But I just feel like I don't know if I don't think the cold cure. I feel like I'm gonna try. I've got a little spot I can kind of heat cure the next time. Try that out. Just experiment.
Okay,
Try and experiment.
Are we good? Are we good here now with the audio? All right.
Yeah.
I was on my mic on my goddamn laptop. I knew I was getting interrupted for some goddamn reason. I couldn't figure out what it was.
You were cutting out a lot more tonight. I noticed that.
I thought it was this, but now we're good. Now we're here. I need to hit my inhaler. You just asked so fucking much, dude. So there's so many goddamn variables.
So
where do you want to start?
The other thing, like, I'm pretty sure, like, Fergoli's run my stuff before, and like, I really don't have like my stuff's. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but it's pretty good, and like, it should dump. I'm just wondering, like, averages, things like that, and anything I can do to make it the best possible. Just like my flour. I don't want anything half-assed. I like the best of everything.
I mean, so first of all, you said you were running. You did your first live. My first thought with live, the first questions I started asking was, "Are you in a fucking cold room? How cold is your water?" You know, a lot of temperature variables that I'm going to start asking. You know, so are you cold? Are you in a cold room?
Yes.
Okay.
Like. I do it. My washroom is actually set up. I've got it nice dry, like where I dry, which has a mini split in it.
Mm-hmm.
I can get it down. It gets down to around 50 in there.
Okay.
If I blast the mini split when I'm washing, sometimes colder in the winter. My water is never above 32. I've got a little thermometer thing I stick down. It's like a digital thermometer thing that tells me exactly like to the point degree. I'm pretty sure it's cold, and it goes straight into my freeze dryer. I pre-freeze my freeze dryer so it's extra cold. I freeze the trays and everything in there. Just everything you see in the videos on YouTube, I've tried. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I said, it didn't turn out bad, but I just feel like it was just missing something.
How were your bags? Were your bags all caked up after you washed?
Oh yeah.
Your room's
sure.
Not cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, your room's not cold enough. You need a room when you're
like
doing
caked up. What do you mean? Like caked up, what do you mean?
Like still have a bunch of hash on the screens themselves.
Oh, after you scoop it? Mm-hmm. Or what do you mean?
Yeah. After you
no, like it comes up super clean.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
As long as you're washing and pulling out of the same vessel though, right? Like
I actually have 3 of those.
Oh, okay.
I have 3 cans set up and a 50-gallon reservoir that I fill with ice, and I fill that up with all my RO water, and I fill up all 3 of the cans with ice and water, and I'm like every wash and I'm changing it over, but it's all super cold. I wait a minute.
Pedro, I think he's probably offsetting that by staying submerged in cold water.
Potentially, right? Yeah.
That,
I mean, 50's not horrible, but it's starting to give me the red flag, of where you could potentially yield more if your room was colder. Is all. That's why I started asking about that caking on the bags. A lot of people will say I started my fresh frozen. And I'm like, well, what temperature is your room? So, well, I got it as cold as I could, about 70 degrees, and washed them with a bunch of ice. And it's just like, so when you start with live, there's a lot of variables. Even I don't, at home, small craft grow, I don't even wash live. I've said this loudly. I've yelled this from the fucking mountaintops. I do half dry all day long. I let my trikes, I let the trike stalks dry out just a little bit, which is monitored by the feel of the flower itself, and my yields, of course, go up substantially because I've got less weight, less material weight itself. But
I don't feel like you lose a lot either, Pedro. Like that's the critical part. Like I think everyone feels like you say dry at all that you're losing something.
Well, it depends on like. My answer to that, sorry to interrupt you, but my answer to that is, are you losing anything when you dry your flour?
Like you're definitely losing a little bit, right? But like if you have a well-controlled dry.
Exactly what I was getting at.
If you can get to, and even 60/60 is not the recommended anymore.
Agreed.
Right? You can dry faster now if you control it very tightly and have 3 phases, but I think for us as hash makers, that's an interesting one to figure out what is our optimum settings and days to get that crystallized, or not really crystallized, the hardened trichome head that we're trying to get, but yet lose as little terps as possible, right?
It's funny. I wish I could have monitored a little bit more like you, Budsy, and taken down the information and tracking the information better, because there's been some years like this year is a perfect example. Scenario, you have whatever's been given you, the cards you've been dealt, right? I had to buy a new house this year. I had to build a new grow room. I'm still building a new wash room. Everything's still in process, right? So my drying conditions are in my garage. Well, it just turned fall, so I had days that are warm, so I have to have an air conditioner in there. I have evenings that are fucking 30 degrees, so I have to have a heater in there. So now we're getting into your controller, your AC Infinity controller that you're talking about, because now I could get them to work together better than just running my fucking heater all the time and then having my air conditioner kick on to vent it, and running a humidifier and everything. So I mean, there's probably been a plethora of times of different variables that I've dried and or washed and or cured in that has resulted in different consistencies, different profiles, different
variables.
Tons of different variables. So that being said, I shot for this year's outdoor 60/60. Man, I had elk hunting up on the mountain. I had plants coming. I had to come down off of the mountain to harvest a plant and then go back up to let it dry. Like it was.
Well, that's why they were smelling you from fucking 10 miles away, bro. Those strawberry terps and shit. Jeez, dude.
So and that's why if any of you guys saw the wedding pie plant that I showed this morning, it's outside. It froze last night. It should have come down today. It had to stay one more night because my timing,
right?
But man, I tell you what, that plant having froze outside on the buds on the plant, generally are some fucking washers that the terpene content goes dramatically higher.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have the microscope now that the wife got me for Christmas. So
there you go.
That's going to be the next thing, is playing with drying and looking really closely at the trikes.
Well, and like you brought up several months ago, there's got to be a way to integrate this AI learning when we're tracking individual trichomes, right? Like maybe that there's a method there, and I'm still processing in my brain how we can do this, but I don't want to go out to the flower room or the dry room rather and take 37 photos maybe every 3 hours to figure out when the best drying time is. But maybe there's a way to have some sort of live feed camera tracking it And and like Pedro was saying, after you get enough data, now you kind of know exactly when the most opportune time is to harvest it at that half dry point or whatever it is
for that plant.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
like
the other thing.
It's a lot of data.
The variables are so crazy because
and in those conditions,
right? Trichome size, the density of the cell wall. How thick is the damn cell wall?
Yeah, that's a really tough one to determine unless you're like, what is it, Schwale, I think, out there taking those pictures of the micron sizes, At some point in time, I wonder, and here we go again, I fucking feel like Frenchie out there. I wonder, is there too much? Is there, what do they call it? The diminishing returns? Do we get to the point?
We're not anywhere close to that yet.
I don't know if there's, I get what you're saying, Pedro, and I agree to a point. I'm kind of half agreeing here. So
sure.
You can use the data to narrow your window, and then everyone can use that window.
There you go.
So that's kind of the idea here. Is right now our window is either fresh frozen or 14 days. Yeah. Like, so it's either it's a huge fucking window, and now we've got new drying conditions to implement. So now we've more fucking variables. The more data we have, the better we're going to be like, you know what? If you hit 3 days at these conditions, your trichomes are going to solidify and fall off the fucking stalks and dump. And you are not going to lose shit for terpenes. It's going to be just like your fresh, right?
Right.
Narrowing
that plant again, though.
Right, exactly.
Now the data is like
this is okay. It's not that we have too much data, Pedro. I don't think. I mean,
no, I'm not. Yeah, it would.
I'm sure there's a limit, right? But what I do think is our intended use for this data is significantly different than the intended use of a corporation like an MSO that's going to be using something like this and paying more for it than any of us would, whether it's to license it, develop it, whatever it is. And what they're going to use that for is to find out how to cram an entire harvest in a year by drying that much quicker. And they're not going to find what are the best conditions to dry it in to yield the best results. They're going to figure out how to harvest it in the quickest
while preserving ROI.
Exactly, for getting the most ROI.
Biggest yield.
Yeah,
biggest yield.
I mean, ultimately, their biggest yield is the dollar, so it's ROI. He's
that
right.
0.2 extra harvest in every fucking 3 years. You get buy a couple weeks here,
but at the same time, there's if we narrow the window and we're talking the difference between fresh frozen and a half dry, if it's only 0.2% of the terpene overall percentage,
but it's 15% yield or something, you know what I mean? Like
right, like
that's huge.
Dialing that in and knowing what that data is tells us it'll stop people from saying, "Hey, fresh frozen."
For sure.
Like,
I'll tell you right
because I agree with you. I love the half dry. I think that's where my sweet spot is with. I'm still an old school at this point, 60-60 dryer.
Same with me, and I just pull it when I fucking when I reach in and feel like it's dry enough. That's when I pull it.
I pull it as I have enough time to trim it and put it in bags in the freezer. So some of mine is half dry, some of mine may be fucking full dry.
Sometimes it's when I need the fucking room to harvest the next plant outside that just fucking died.
Yep. All right.
Speaking of the real quick, speaking of the half dry, I'm a huge proponent of the half dry. I actually tried to implement it into the Eden's processing.
Nice.
Commercially, it just can't be done. I mean, maybe can be, but it's just ridiculous. Because
what are the limitations?
The drying space, proper drying space.
That's always a limitation in grows. It seems like.
I mean, if you're talking, if you're talking
about
all grows. I mean, if you're talking about just beds, pounds and pounds and pounds. If you guys have seen my stories, like one of those greenhouses gets harvested at once. So the amount of drying space would be monumental. And even if you staggered the harvest, which when you talk to your fucking your investors, they really don't want you doing that because you're taking away that extra harvest that you can get in 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're arguing with with someone for space versus terps versus small scale versus large scale versus
quality versus quantity.
Perfect. Exactly. So that's why I kind of like to remain a subcontractor, and I will almost, I don't know if I'll always say it, but for right now, small craft is better. It just is. We have more
hard
time
to compete. Yeah.
We have more time. We have, I'll say that. Not in all instances, but we just have a lot more time, space to pay attention to all the variables.
Okay, so now we're talking commercial versus craft, because it's hard to be both, and their reasons for maybe half drying or just shopping for fresh frozen or whatever it might be. Now, I want to compare why that may or may not apply, the half dry, to hydrocarbon extraction in a closed loop, because my understanding of why you guys are doing that is because it's a faster method for, well, I don't know about faster, but it's explain it to me, Superior. What's the reasons for doing a half dry?
You're allowing the trichome head to solidify for some of your greasier strains that won't wash in a day one, can wash once you half dry.
Okay.
It's all about the outer structure of the trichome head. Is it ready? Like Frenchie would say, right? Is it ripe fruit ready to fall off, or does it need a little bit of drying to make that neck a little brittle?
And so
as well.
So at the cost of a couple days time, maybe a very minimal, probably unnoticeable, terp loss or quality loss or whatever you want to call it. There you go. And at the benefit of an increased yield per run, if you will, that's the reasons for doing that, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So different thing with your style because you can, like we said before, you don't have the same issue we have.
Right. And that's why I just wanted to put it in the, the same context, but in the kind of sort of, I guess, bracket of hydrocarbon, because I'm trying to figure out if it does apply or not.
Well,
just through thought experiment here real quick, because we talked about 3 reasons to or not to do it. And the one that makes sense to me is yield, right? Like if I can cram more, like Pedro mentioned earlier, if we're doing fresh frozen, it's 80% water weight, right? If we're doing half dry, maybe it's only 50% water weight. So technically the input of our material might be the same, weights. It might be, I don't know, 9,000 grams versus 9,000 grams, but now a significant portion of that, maybe even up to a third, is just actual mass, not water weight. So
yes,
our return should go up significantly.
Well, unfortunately, the mass doesn't decrease as well with the water weight. So you still have the same mass. You have
the volume.
Volume. Saying okay. Thank you. You still have the same amount of volume because your flowers don't shrink. I mean, they do a little bit, but that's not like substantial. It's not as substantial as the water differentiation.
And you guys can't or shouldn't do any sort of compression where I could do that in a closed loop system because I'm well,
you got to be
soaking it.
You've got to be as gentle as possible up until the wash and through the wash with your hash. I mean, it's a very gentle process.
Yeah, I think I'd be probably processing 35 to 40% of my weight if I didn't compress it at all. You know what I mean? Like I would have to have some big old columns. But I tell you what, my solvent to material ratio would go through the roof, and generally that means a little bit higher return. So
sure. I back to the reasoning though, I would also argue over the years a pre-dry, if you will. I mean, let's complicate things even more, right? Or a pre-cure, if you will. Like Bud's alluded to a second ago, or mentioned a second ago, we were talking about Frenchie a couple times here on this episode. because it's hash fucking related. Is the fruit ripe to harvest, right? And here's another thing that commercial dryers, and I tried to implement this as well. So another thing that commercial dryers could potentially take advantage of, or commercial growers could potentially take advantage of, is they could potentially take a couple days off of their grow time, harvest a couple days earlier, let it dry, so then they could actually get the plants in the soil. They could get their clones replanted a little bit sooner, while their plants are drying / curing, and then continue on with the processing there. So we could actually, by doing the half dry, cut off a couple days and therefore get in a couple more harvests if you could get the drying room situation figured out.
Yeah, drying room is one of those things that takes up a lot of space, and for whatever reason, these people that are designing commercial grow facilities never give it enough room. Often don't give it enough controls either. Exactly. Yeah, it should just basically be a whole nother grow room. You know, and if you've got, I mean,
depending on how packed it is, though, it
almost feels 1-to-1. Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't take like fucking 6 grow rooms and put it into the size of 1 grow room.
Right.
Use the same HVAC.
I got my drying tent.
It's almost like a 2-to-1. You need 1-to-1. You know.
Exactly.
That's literally the problem that I just ran into this year. Was, again, we talked about, you know, the different variables that I have and starting over essentially. I have a 3x3 dry tent right now for what you have seen as my outdoor grow. That motherfucker is not sufficient. You know, it'll hold 1 plant at best, and that's pretty stuffed in there. So coming down off the hill, you know, from hunting, I had to come down and I had to process material from the drying tent in order to harvest, to get it into the drying tent. So I mean, it becomes a big fuck show if you don't have
juggling shit.
If you don't have enough drying space, it's a fuck, man.
It's the worst time to panic too, is right, you know, after you took them all down, and
now
you don't know what the hell to do.
Well, and then
all of a sudden your dried shit starts getting a little spongy, and you're like, oh no.
Too dry? Did I take it down a day, or did I bucket a day early? Did I bucket a day late? You know, variables, right?
I have enough controls that I can hit a button. My flower room will switch to 60/60, and I can full chop and hang it from. I have Unistrut that my lights are on.
Flip it upside down. Leave the pot behind.
Yep.
Okay, so I don't think that you guys got to it yet, but all this hash talk, we ask every one of our guests to define the word hash and what it means to them. Can you go ahead and give us your answer, JR?
That's a tough one. Hash is like the essence of every plant, I feel like. That's why I like it so much. It's like the whole terp essence of a plant is in that concentrate. I mean, obviously it's concentrated of that plant, of course, but I mean, if you really want to taste the real flavor of that plant, I feel like hash is the best way, even more than flour.
So hash is the essence. What
I want to dig deeper, but I'm trying to.
What constitutes hash? You said concentrates. It's a concentrated form of the plant, but like, are all concentrates hash, or is it like more the traditional sense?
I mean, I'm not I'm not a hash snob. Like, I like all kinds of hash. Like, I like I'll dry sift, and like I was telling you the other day, like I've never had hash better than what you make. Like, everything you have is fire, and like everybody right now is all over the rosin stuff, and it's like I still feel like the best terps come from hydrocarbon extraction, and like don't get me wrong, like there's great hash out there too, hash rosin. It's just the terps are it's just different. Like, I don't know.
Oh,
that's just that's my personal. If it's run right, BHO, I feel like it's still great hash.
I think we all agree on that. You know, even Pedro, like we're kind of in the same boat. It's just we're old and can't handle those strong terps anymore. Like I love Fagroli, the lime skunk. I love the taste of it, but the sharpness of it like hurts my throat. It's like I taste it for a little after, and I'm like, damn, like I gotta.
See, I don't have any of that. Like I have more of. I feel like it just packs more of a punch than rosin ever does. Like that's the best way I can describe it. Like it doesn't make my throat sore or anything like that. I don't cough more, whether it's rosin or resin. Like
my thing is after like packing the punch is one thing, and I think it can do that too. But I still think, and I think there's a reason Pedro advised us not to do this and called us all crackheads for doing it. But I think that hydrocarbon-based extracts still maintain their flavor after 10, 15, 20 seconds on the nail after hitting it 3, 4, 5 times. After
I was trying to figure out, I'm like, where did I
most
call you
rosins?
What?
We're over here, clearing our fucking bowl to the point where we don't really even need a Q-tip, right? Like, because it's still got the flavor in it, and I don't feel like rosin can maintain that for the most part. I like I always say, there are exceptions to the rule, but there's very few exceptions to the rule.
I think that's the difference, though, with like a 5 and a 6 star level of quality is with good rosin. You can get even what they would rate as a 2 or a 3 star is still, you could still get good tasty rosin, but you're gonna have more on your Q-tip when you clean it up.
Yep.
So you can't let it burn for a long period or at a hotter temp because you're going to chaz your nail. Yeah. So
just like, I mean, doing right now, doing the Terp Wars competition that I've been doing for the last month here. One of the categories is debris. And unfortunately, that is one of my strongest judged categories. If you have a little debris in your nail, on a scale of 10, you've already dropped to a 4. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Damn. You have work to do. I'm glad to tell you that because you have room to improve. And I've even put on a couple of my cards. Great fucking rosin. Work on your debris.
Mm-hmm. Damn. That's, I think that says a lot, especially coming from Pedro. Because I sit over here and just joke about the Q-tips, after I take rosin dabs and like hold them up and stuff. I've done it on this show and on MBGS, and I kind of joke about it. But that's, I mean, essentially, if we're talking about a grade school scale, you failed if it's that dark. You know what I mean? In Pedro's eyes.
Well, it's not necessarily the color. It's like actual debris sometimes, like
actual
well, it could be the color too, but
color. I will say that for the most part,
what are we talking, like roasted aphids and fucking spider bites and shit, or what?
But we're not talking like the difference between gold and brown, though. Like it's
no,
more
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's your blacks and your
grays. You could leave any gold concentrate on the nail long enough, and it's gonna turn brown. It's just
hang on. We're not. I'm not talking about the color of the oil left on the nail.
We're agreeing with that.
Yeah,
I'm literally talking about debris left over,
like the aphids that are
from for sure, whatever the fuck it might be. You've got
whatever got through the screens.
Whatever was stuck on your head there was. Yeah.
And just the tip, what screens did you use? So there you go.
Touche. Well, which ones do you recommend, sir?
Give me a holler. We'll talk about it. No, fuck that. I've never been about holding information back. If you're not using a 5-micron screen and you're rosin pressing, you're fucking up.
There you go.
Period.
5 micron. 5 micron, really?
525, 160, baby. And I can give you a reason for each.
Well, I'm all ears because I'm probably looking at about
was it a 25.5? I think we're doing 25.5. I lied. 25.5, 160.
I might have to actually look it up, whatever my favorite screen is for the thing that holds back my material, basically the gasket, the stainless steel gasket that holds back my material. So I went all the way down to 5 micron before because I think that's like the smallest they sell.
Yeah, 5 is about the
that
smallest I can find.
It ran so slow. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. Like, this is crazy.
Same with
so
like
crazy.
It's almost the same with like when you're pulling hash and we're talking about the now there's a lot of different screens.
Do you have to
and
press
bags.
harder?
Well, no. When we're
Okay.
talking about washing and collecting that 25 micron bag, a lot of people just let it go anymore because of the amount of time it takes or agitation it takes to get the water through the 25 micron screen. Same thing you're experiencing.
Yeah.
But no, with the press, with the 25, then 5, then 160, if it's oil, so it's coming through. You know, the only thing that's not coming through is what you're not melting in the time that it's on the plates. Man, that was a hell of a fucking tip right there. You should clip that shit.
I can dig it. This is all brand new information. My green ass over here.
And no, this is actually, I mean, probably one of the better hash episodes that I think we've had as far as getting into details and whatnot of the pressing and collecting. But I mean, back to the debris. If you have debris, if you have rosin with debris, do you really have rosin?
Isn't it just dry sift at that point?
Or do you just have rosiny hash? You know, like, and
I
that
don't even
gets
know what that means.
Well, that gets back to my definition of hash, where it stops at hash. You know, is BHO hash? No, BHO is processed hash. You know, is rosin hash? No, it's processed hash. Do I call it hash once in a while in lingo? Yeah, come on. Yeah, whatever we do. When it gets down to definitions, no, rosin's not hash. BHO's not hash.
See how opinions can vary, but we can still land on the same goals.
Yeah, 100%, dude, 100%. And when JR was talking about good processing, you've got one right there. You know, as far as BHO, man, there's not much BHO I would smoke, honestly, just because of trust. Just because of trust. But Fragoli's all fucking day long.
I appreciate that.
Although I couldn't smoke it all fucking day long because it was too much
fucking asthma attack over here.
I love it, even though it hurts.
It hurts so good.
You guys are so weird. All right, so I want to know what else is on this this voting card.
10 years, and we'll see. You got another. I want to see how your throat's feeling.
Oh, I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years. Well, I've been processing for over 7, but I've been.
I know, but. Got lots
of what do you want to know about the voting card?
It didn't bother me when I was in my 40s. It's like,
oh, I know, dude.
How long ago was that?
The older I get, the more.
Like, it's as I've approached 50. That's where all the old man problems appeared.
Well, yeah, but that's I don't think that's due to the type of hash you're smoking.
No, but the hash will activate it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point in which a low temp, high terpene content dab hurts me more than a slightly warm dab. Wow. And or when I drop the rosin in the banger, I unfortunately have to wait just a second for not a lot, but some of the terpenes to burn off before I can inhale because of the content, the terpene content in the rosin that I smoke.
I wonder if there's a different style rig that would help with that or something. But I want to get back to my question. Which
I need to stop taking such big dabs. Go ahead.
Hey, maybe that's
what's wrong with that.
Something to try. They just go teeners all day or something. But so my question for you, Pedro, and this is going to relate to a question I want to ask 321. But the kind of rating scale that you're having to go through with the Terp Wars, and the fact that the first one you brought up was debris, and the other fact that I don't think I've ever actually seen that listed as a category in which you need to vote on for any concentrate in the past. But certainly something we've talked about on the show and in person, and kind of how we certainly feel a certain type of way about it. What are the other things that I assume Pelle Polaire, right, has put you on to kind of rate or give a scale to?
Well, I mean, the different categories here, I'll bring this back over, are scent, flavor, vapor, reaction, and debris. So in the scent, obviously, we're just generally talking about your first, you open the jar and does it just boom the room? Or, yeah, there you go, right? Or is it more of a, you kind of got to smell it, kind of got to stir it up a little bit in order to smell it? Essentially what the scent is. How loud is it? How distinguishable, how notable, how common is it, From there, it's the flavor, both inhale, exhale, and linger. So if you have, your heavy flavor on the inhale, but not the exhale, or vice versa, and or no linger whatsoever, and or what it tastes like. Does it taste like dirt? Does it taste like earth? Yeah, or flowers? Does it taste like, and dirt's not always bad. Let me put that out there.
Right.
Flower, or does it taste like, is it skunk, or is it fruity? Is it candy? Vapor, it includes harshness, as well as kind of like the thickness of the vapor, and that the thickness kind of sounds like it's a temperature based thing, but for me, you can have a dab where it's just not thick, like whatever that means, it's just not thick. And then you can have a dab where you're like, when it won't stop coming out, and it's just like, holy Jesus Christ, So to me, there's a difference in vapor, and as well, does it linger? How long does the essence linger? Reaction is pretty obvious. Where is it hitting you? How strong? How long is it lasting? And then the debris, which is generally the color of the oil left in the banger, slurp, or whatever you're smoking out of. The color of it, the smell of it, how much it has changed. If it smells like fucking burnt rubber, if it just smells like a burnt version of what you just smoked.
Yeah, getting that carbon smell.
Yeah, exactly. And of course the debris. And then I feel like, for me, debris is one of the higher scoring, one of the more important ones. Let's go from there. The flavor and the lung punch, to me, is a big factor. And then, of course, the reaction. Scent comes in there as well, too. I mean, if I don't like the scent, it immediately makes me it ruins my experience.
I mean, that's like your body's safeguard to even wanting to experience it in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. The nose knows.
Yeah, man. And sometimes when I've been going through, and I think that this should be implemented a little bit with these judging competitions and whatnot, we get a gram to do the judging, and I sit down in a live stream, in an hour live stream on Instagram, and I dab the entire gram. But I also think that during that dab sesh, there should be a difference in temperature of the dab that you take. And I'm not saying take a fucking 700 degree dab versus a 300 degree dab. I'm saying take one at 530, maybe take one at 550, maybe take one at 580, see what the difference is. What I've noticed is that different temperatures will produce different, I want to say it produces different terpenes, but I don't know that that's the correct chemistry thing.
You're probably removing terpenes, which is exposing underlying
potentially.
Yeah.
What I find that sometimes is, if I get a peppery, like holy shit, my eyes start watering, peppery, burnt, you blew it out your nose a little bit, and you get that pepper, I better sit the fuck down, because I'm in trouble. Whatever the reason, the hot dabs produces that extra terpene profile, and then that terpene profile, obviously with the cannabinoids, we've known this for a long time. It's not the THC content, it's also the profile and the cannabinoids and the terpene content. That fucks me up. So I think that taking a dab at different temperatures will reveal different experiences.
I think I need to save you a jar of this wasabi I created.
Oh my God.
So
that's scary, because everything
that
I
scares
smoke
me
from you tastes like what it fucking is named.
I know, right? That scares me.
Well, let me tell you the story of why I named it.
That's exactly what I was thinking about it.
So I kind of just took the last of the bottoms of some leftover bags, if you will, of some fresh frozen, and loaded up my column as one does, and decided I was going to create a new combo. I typically do this with 2, maybe 3 strains. This happened to be 4, which is a little out of the ordinary for me. But once you get to 4, you start really like it can become just like too much of a plane of flavor. You know what I mean? There's no like peaks or valleys. It's just like kind of just all tastes the same. So I try to keep it to only a couple, but I took it was a majority, maybe even close to half, maybe like 40% squirt, which is one of the newer strains in my garden. It's that kind of grapefruit profile, but it's what I like to call lime skunk wrapped in grapefruit, because it's, I don't know, it just like smells like lime skunk when it's growing to me. So 40% squirt, and then probably about, I don't know, maybe we'll just call it like 30% garlic punch. So I had some garlic punch in there, which we know is the GMO and berries, and then of course I did have a tiny little bit of lime skunk left, so I threw that in there as well. So there was some actual lime skunk in there. And then last but not least, I had a little bit of biscotti pie, which is completely like different from those profiles, and topped it off with that.
Yeah, you just spooged a little bit of everything you had in there.
yeah, there you go, some biscotti pie right there. And so I it's a surprisingly terpy one, I will say. Biscotti pie is. So I processed them all together. I just put it all in one column, soak it, do my processing thing as I do, and just whipped it in a batter. And the first dab I took of it, this is before I even put a name to it yet, obviously. The first dab I took of it, I took the hit, and immediately it like shifted right to like that bridge of your nose. So sometimes like it kind of hits you in different places, but this one was like way up in the nose, like all the terps just went way up, and I'm like, woof, and like, oh, that's pretty intense.
That'll make your eyes water.
Yeah, because I honestly,
you literally got to do that.
Yeah, because right off the bat, I like tasted biscotti pie, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like all those other flavors, I'm getting this biscotti pie, but then it was like, oh no, here they all come, And so it all went to the bridge of my nose, and then like a second later, I sneezed.
Oh,
and I'm like, oh shit, and then I sneezed again. I'm like, oh my Lanta, and then I sneezed a third time.
Lanta, he said.
And I just looked at my wife and I go, this is like I just ate sushi with wasabi on it, like way too much wasabi on it, because that just hit me in the face like wasabi, like arm sweats, forehead sweats, everything, And I'm like, there it is. We're calling this one wasabi, because I don't know if I'll ever be able to actually recreate that combination. I know I kind of gave you the gist of the ratio there. That's but
crazy.
Yeah,
dude. For whatever reason, when I get that, I forget what the terpene is. If it's God damn it, I can't remember what the terpene is. Is it myrcene, or is it? I feel like it's not myrcene.
Okay.
Budge is over there being Jamie for us. So,
it's Caryophyllene.
Yeah,
I was like, it's something that I can't pronounce. Like,
I hate terpene names. I'm
gonna go a little warmer on this one, just for the
dude. I actually had to go to PSI Labs when they used to be open. Shout out. And they corrected the actual scientists there corrected me on a couple of days, because I was like trying to explain what I was looking for, and I'm like, terpenoline, and he's like, terpenoline, and I was like, sure, yep, I'm gonna use that one now. Like, learn it from the PhD guy. Yeah, they're rough. It's Latin. I think it's isn't it right? Isn't it all from
it's
like
just,
Latin?
Well, it's just like trying to say some plant names, actual plant names.
It's biology. It's just
yeah,
Latin. I hate it.
That was some of the
chemistry and math and
drop C, by the way, for Growling. That stuff is too much.
No, it's not. It's just right. Chef's kiss. I love it. I want more of it. I'm sure you some
probably arrange
wasabi. Yeah, I got some wasabi coming your way, I think. Before it's all gone, because it's about to be all gone. All right. So all that being said about this judging and the competition and the different profiles and all this stuff, JR, you've mentioned how like it's not, you don't have necessarily a flavor preference or like a flavor profile, terpene profile preference. But it does seem like you're a fan of flavor. You know what I mean? It's not like that's like low on the list, but it also, and maybe that's just as a smoker, but also as a grower, I assume, you mentioned you're looking for volume. So, that's got to be up there on that list. But I want to know as like a grower and a smoker and kind of all those things combined, what does this like top 3 to 5 look like of like importance to you when it comes to cannabis? Because I can think of a lot of different things, like the terpenes or the terpene profile, right? Maybe the general bag appeal, maybe you just like stuff that's purple or frosty, or maybe you just like stuff that's easy to trim, or just grows under any freaking environmental conditions. It's just easy to grow, right? What are, give me those like 3 to 5 important things to you as a grower and smoker.
Well, as a grower, one, like there definitely are plants that don't work out great in the system that I run. Not many, but there's a few where like I'll run 3 times and I just can't. They just do not like the aggressive how I feed it and the schedule.
Can I just really quickly pause and give you a shout out? And this is something that new growers aren't going to do. New growers are going to try to adjust their entire environment and their conditions to a new strain. But if you've been growing for a long time, you know that you just have to grow like to your philosophy, stick to it. And if shit works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's just how it is.
And
sorry to interrupt.
Match your system.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And like my favorite strain of all time is GMO. Like I love GMO. Like GMO flower is awesome, but in my environment, my setting, I tried running it 3 times and I had to tear it down. It just started hermiing. It did not like my environment. Like my humidity was not high enough. Yeah, and I'm like, I just can't have that. I love that flower, but I just can't grow it in my environment for sure. And some I've really burnt up. Like they just, like week 7, they're just done. And it's just like, all right. And everything else in the room will be happy, praying, loving it, like balling out. And then you'll just see one that's just brown. It's like, what happened to you? I guess I'm not running you again. That was easy to get rid of for sure. But like as a smoker, like I definitely think the terpene like profile is definitely important. I really think you can have the best of both worlds with potency and terpenes, in my opinion. And potency is very important in mine and what I pick. But everything I grow also is very, very terpy. There's nothing that I grow that it has to have both. It's kind of like
it's got the bag of
necessity.
You know what I mean? Like across the board, from the time you open it to the time you smoke it, And it's got
for sure,
right? Like it has to.
Well, let me jump in there real quick and say that no, it doesn't have to. If you're growing for hash, it doesn't have to have any bag appeal.
Oh no, I'm just saying flower for smoking flower. I didn't know. I was just saying.
No, I was
for sure.
Just jumping.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
sure.
I've been
You're not wrong.
Way uglier buds since I've been growing just for hash because I'm trying to get them to be more airy.
Yep.
Like I'm not trying for tight packed nugs.
Exactly.
For sure.
It was a whole change in how I had always grown because I've always grown for flower. But when you're going strictly for hash, it's cool to be able to think different.
I tried to trim some of the Critical Kush that I just grew outside. I was actually trimming it this afternoon, and I just kept throwing at bud after bud into the trim bin that I was using because it was just too airy. It didn't have the bag appeal. I'm like, man, I always want to smoke flower of Critical Kush, but it's better as hash.
This sitting on my desk.
Yeah, it's better. It's better as fucking hash and rosin,
right?
So.
Well, and it's the same like manicuring versus just bucking and bagging.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I can't tell you last time I manicured a flower.
Dude, it sucked. I just did it today. It sucked.
I'm so glad I don't have to do that.
I was thinking that every fucking bud was like, I'm so glad I don't do this all the time now.
Yeah.
Shout out my wife.
Right. Same,
my wife loving it now. She's the best trimmer in the world, I swear to God.
Pain in the dick, dude. I hate trimming
such a
now.
pain. And it always takes twice as long as you think it's going to in your head.
I'd much rather sit.
But it always looks so good.
I'd much rather sit in a cold ass fucking room, freezing my ass off than trim.
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't have wasabi without Mrs. Fergoli. Shout out to the ladies.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of
Adam. Yep, I was just thinking. At least you got something good to watch while you're trimming, right?
That's the beauty of podcast. Holy smokes.
Yep. Well, and the comfortable trim bins help a lot now. Got the arm slots. I mean, you can chill in a lazy boy, put us up on the big screen, just trim away.
So was there did we miss anything on that list for you? 321 was the kind of bag of feel stuff, the terp profile, the effects or potency as you put it. Is there anything else that's like kind of stand out to you? It's got to fit with your growing philosophy. That's probably number one, really.
For sure, like that. And like, I mean, growing wise, like I kind of look for the same thing in every plant, just like my system, and they just got to fit that flavor and that potency, and be those unicorns. I've went through hundreds and hundreds of plants, man.
There you go, Pedro. This is
that rainbow sherp.
You were here for it earlier.
Yeah, there you go. And like I just said, I've grown hundreds and hundreds of plants. That right there is probably the most beautiful plant I've ever grown. Just straight looking, gorgeous, and the terps, it's just amazing.
All your
I've grown
thick and dense, but that's actually really squeezing it.
But just as a heads up, that one might not be a washer because it might.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure, and even Fergoli's told me that before. Like sometimes, it's just too big. The nug meat.
Dude, sometimes I get these freaking donkeys, and I'm like, bro, would you quit growing such massive weed over here? Like, holy!
And then back to the
Coke cans. It's a bottle or a bag of fucking Coke cans.
Before I forget it, back to we were talking about the tips in hash making and whatnot. Scope your fucking hash. Like when you pull a bag, or after you're done freeze drying, or before pressing, or even before consuming, let's just say that, scope your fucking hash. Is it full of stalks? Is it full of debris? Or are you smoking heads? Are you squishing heads? Because that's what's going to determine your better fucking rosin at the end. That's what's going to determine your 5 versus your 6 star.
Is it easier to just do that after you've already washed it, or should you be doing that before you harvest it?
No, because before you harvest it, it's all going to be there. There's going to be the debris. There's going to be the stalks. There's going to be the heads. There's going to be the flower. There's going to be the plant material. It doesn't make any sense to do it.
Seeing how well you cleaned the wash.
Yeah. Other than that, right?
Yeah. So what you're going to be scoping for
repeatable
prior to harvest is it ready, and is it going to be a good washer? And those are some other factors that we can talk about as well. But when you're scoping it as a hash, what you're determining is the quality of the hash, and that's why I've always told everybody to throw in all the bags. That's why Rosin Evolution sells them. They've got a 25, 45, the 73, the 90, they got a 110. I think they threw in there now, and a 119, 120. So there's a whole plethora of bags that they've thrown in there for a reason. Because most of the ripe fruits, we're talking back to Frenchie again, most of the ripe fruits are the same size for that plant at that time you harvested. So when you have all of the different bags and you start scoping the hash after it's pulled and dried, you can scope them separately, press accordingly, mix accordingly, without going into great detail.
You and certainly Frenchie definitely have more experience in scoping and comparing heads of different strains than I. That being said, I can think of one strain in particular that I've grown in my decade of experience growing different strains that never quit producing new trichomes, whether it was week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I tested it all the way through, even lab tests, Durban Poison. Nice. And so that was one of those strains that just you're never going to get a consistent head size, I think.
Sure.
Now, I don't think all strains are like that, and I don't think most strains are like that. I think actually very few strains are like that. but I do think there are times at which that might not be the case.
And there's different reasons and different. I mean, I guess I'll go there. There's different reasons. I used to talk about pressing the 45 to 159. Because that was the full spectrum. I always said, if you want full spectrum, smoke flower. But the full spectrum.
I love that shit.
The full spectrum would be the 45 to 159. Now you can cut that down to the 73 to 119. There's a multitude of different ways you can cut that down. But ultimately, what we were talking about is the quality of the rosin. If we go back to the quality of the rosin as the end result, if you're pressing rosin with a bunch of stalks, it can still look and smell and taste decent, but that's generally where you're going to start getting the throat, the tickle, besides the terpene content, and that's where you're going to start getting the debris that's left over in whatever bang that you're using. So we've always said this, starting material, of course, it starts with the flower, but then what hash are you starting with to then result in good rosin? You've got to start with good material in order to get good rosin. If you're just going for that 45 to 159, which is great medicine, it's not going to be the award-winning rosin.
What about curing? Curing, do you recommend?
Cold
curing?
Now,
okay, I'm so glad because didn't I bring this up? Okay, please explain this because I could not remember what it was, and I remembered it after the show 3, 2, 1. It was fresh press that he really fucking hates.
Oh,
I hate fresh. Yeah. We were talking about cold curing.
Fresh
I'm like,
press is what it was.
We gotta get you on the show. We gotta talk to Pedro about this because I can't remember. There's he has some preferences. I just don't remember what it is.
Fresh.
That's what it is. So yeah, tell them about curing. Like, what's the proper way to go about that? Your ideal methods, I guess.
Throw it in the refrigerator and wait.
Oh,
seal it
so
up.
Hard to do.
Hang on, time out. Fill the jar 3/4 of the way. Seal it airtight. Put it in a refrigerator and wait.
Should I vacuum seal the jar instead of a bag?
It's not a bad idea if you're not sure of the seal.
Right.
Yeah, right. It's not. You just, as a matter of fact, if you rewind this podcast a little bit, you'll see me opening up a little vacuum sealed jar, your vacuum sealed bag that contained my jar here because I wasn't sure of the quality of the seal versus the length of the time I planned on having this in here. But just wait. And here's actually some jars sitting here. I actually showed these off a little while ago. I don't know if I have quite the best lighting in here, but these are some fresh press jars that I'm waiting on a cure. And the biggest reason that I don't like the fresh press is because of how it handles. Fresh press is like dealing with it's sticky, tacky, very stringy when you try,
it's like high CBD hydrocarbon extracts. That's how they turn out.
Very, very hard to manipulate. And to me is way harsher. And can be a less harsher but less terpene profile. I can't say terpene content, but I can say profile for sure. To me, you just get a much better, I guess just overall profile when you let it cure in the fridge. I don't know how else to say that.
Is there a time? How do you determine in which it's done curing in the fridge?
Generally it's done when it's got the terpene layer on the top. When it's separated. And there's a layer of terpenes that are laying on the top. But it could also be argued that you would want to then wait for those terpenes to be re-entered into the rosin, which does happen naturally or over time. And we're talking about these jars here have been in the refrigerator for a week or two. So we're not talking a hell of a long time. Some jars can be in the refrigerator for 3-4 days and cure. Some it'll take a fucking month, and you're like, would you hurry the fuck up?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of variables there.
Yeah, there really is.
How much headspace?
Yep, absolutely. The air, how much air is in the jar? Yep. and just the rosin itself. But
right.
God, and I can think, I was just gonna say, and I actually believe that harvest time and trichome ripeness actually has a big is a big variable in that curing process as well. Man, where the fuck were we? There were so many variables that just shit through my head. Oh fuck! Back to curing. Why I hate fresh press. When is it done? It's done when it's done. If you like the terpene or the terpene layer on the top and you like to stir it back in, do it. You know, if you like fresh press, smoke fresh press. They sell fresh press for a reason. Good luck keeping it fresh press, but if you like fresh press, smoke fresh press.
Yeah. How many hours on the desk does it take?
Yeah, when's it not fresh press?
Yeah, sometimes it's like you hit that couch and you come back and you're like, fuck, where'd my fresh press go?
Butter.
Yeah, fuck fresh press. I heard you. I don't know. I don't know if he's trying to talk or if he's not trying to talk over there.
Oh, I'm just talking shit about Hash. Don't worry.
I thought you were. I was like, fuck fresh press, fuck not fresh press.
Yeah, just
But yeah, I definitely like a cold cure. Now that being said, man, if you watch Rackham's or the Bryantist or fucking Terposaurus Rex is another great one. Their heat assisted cures. And man, you want to talk variables again? Jesus Christ! Their heat-assisted cures are magnificent. Sometimes, like fucking spectacular. Like there's times when you get those diamonds and whatnot, and you're like, well, why would I want to just fucking smoke a diamond with a bunch of sauce and shit on it? You know, and it's like, well, why would you want to go to a restaurant once in a while and fucking have caviar? You know, like why would you want that Wagyu steak every once in a while? Why would you? You know.
That's my taste.
Yeah,
that's my jazz right there. Give me them bowl. Let me get some of that terps. Let me get a boulder.
So yeah,
ideal.
So the heat assisted ones, man, they can accentuate profiles that you just can't get with the cold cure or with fresh press for sure. And some of the consistencies, if you're the appearance. That's the thing to note here. The appearance on the rosin actually was not judgeable. I mean, it was judged, but it wasn't. It didn't have a number
rating
assigned to it. Yeah. So yeah, having the fresh press versus the diamonds versus that. But if you like a consistency, like if that's part of and it is, I'm not being silly about it. If that's part of the process in which you know you get your nipples hard, literally, then do it. You know, if you like that heat assisted cure, then do it. If you like to play with the fresh press, then do it. You know, everybody's got their different fantasies.
There's very few wrong ways of doing it, but you know, sometimes there are wrong ways of doing it. You just gotta say, like, you're not gonna get judged for the most part. You know, just try to get that fire and fire out. That's really where it comes from. So
we all want good hash.
Yeah,
absolutely. Fire and fire out, like you said, absolutely. If you don't have, man, I heard you guys talk about clones and stuff earlier. If you don't have good clones, if you don't have good flour, if you don't have good trikes, if you don't have good fucking good heads, if you don't have good hash, you don't have good, it just doesn't come out at the end. It's all gotta be good
variables.
Yeah, you can make decent out of poop, but I don't think you can make good out of poop. So
yeah, what is it? There's something like something about polished shit and gold. It's still shit. I don't know.
Yeah, I forget what that is too. You can polish a dart. Yeah, I forget what that is.
Who knows? I don't know. Euphemisms or whatever the word is. Out of metaphors. I don't understand any of that. So
you can polish a turd. You can polish a turd all you want, but it's still a turd. There you go.
We'll go with that one.
I'll go with that one.
We'll leave it in the comments below if you made it this far. But if you did make it this far, 3, 2, 1. Where can we find you? Shout it out.
What's up?
You on Instagram? You on YouTube?
Oh yeah,
Where can we find you?
Sorry. 321 Genetics. Yeah, 321 Genetics on Instagram. That's the only thing I'm on.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing your experience and your perspectives, man. It was a pleasure. We hope to have you back another time soon. And
Pleasure's all mine. Pleasure's all mine. I appreciate you guys having me. Nice meeting you guys. Thanks for the great info, man. Greatly appreciate that.
No worries, man. No worries. I'm not one that holds it back. I try to share it as much as I can. So
I think next week we're going to have Professor back, and then we'll go from there. Cheers, guys. Appreciate you joining. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.